In favor, please indicate with a raise of hand. Okay. All right, we're going to move into Mr. Roller. I believe you're up first.
Take one pass, one back.
Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, Madam Chairman, what you have headed your way is an update for the Advanced Ed review that's been going on since May 31st of 18. We did our first monitoring review. It was completed in December. Dr. Harrison from Advanced Ed brought back the findings in February, presented it back to us. And what I wanted to do, now that they've all reached you, is point out that in the first monitoring review, we had 31 standards, 31 directives, and 6 priorities that we were responsible for. After that review, in December, the February findings left us with 5 priorities, 6 standards, and 18 directives. Now, Mr. Salter, if you'll scroll up just a little bit more, you'll see that that's 1 less priority, that's 25 fewer standards, and 13 fewer directives. So you can see that there's movement, there's growth, there's some positive things going. As you turn over to the first priority, you'll see out to the side, I put emerging in yellow. Dr. Moore and I had some conversation about whether or not you can see that. Some
And
of
she
us-
was right.
Yes, ma'am. I knew she was right. I knew it. I knew it. So I'll go back and change that. But what I was doing was I was playing on the red, yellow, green, and blue from Advanced Ed. If your priority or your standards were red, you needed some major work. If you were yellow, you were emerging. So the standards and priorities and directives that are remaining are yellow, so that's why I put emerging by those. So if you look, the standard is 1.4. It talks about what the standard is. It's governing. You come down, you look at the directive. Very similar to the same way we did it last time, and what you'll see is that this one has some ongoing pieces to it. It has policy review committee meetings that will be determined. It has a set time where the policy review committees will meet. It tells you who are the people that will make up the policy review. And then as you go through, you can see the policies that we had completed during this school term. And so the entire policy manual is complete. I'm just going to wait for that nod from my dear friend over there against the wall in HR. So all of the policies are up to date. But remember, as we look at policies, we look at what the law says. So when the law changes, you change what you're doing with your school board policies, okay? Let's go to priority 2. Let's do 2. I'm not going to read all of these to you because, again, this is exactly like we did last year. We're going to post these on the website after tonight's meeting. We never post before we let you guys see it. But if you look at 2, you look at priority 2, the governing authority adheres to a code of ethics and functions within defined roles and responsibilities. Come down to directive 1, January 9th, Montgomery Public Schools Board of Ed participated in AASB board training exercise. January 10th, the board president and vice president meets with the superintendent for agenda review. January 18th, executive cabinet members held an orientation for new board members. You guys remember that? Shake your head, board members. Okay, is that informative?
Very.
It's good. You got to see. Now, our currently seated and previously seated board members, you guys already knew that. You already
Yes.
knew who did what and how to go through the process of the executive team, and you already knew that. But for the new members, they needed an orientation to know which one of the executive staff members handled what departments and what their roles were and how things went. So I felt that that orientation was a fantastic first thing to do with the new board, just to kind of give you faces and names and places to go to get your updates and ask your questions when you're working with Dr. Moore. Okay, so they conducted those new board member orientations with the executive cabinet. February 5th, AASB training. February 25th, superintendent meets with board president and vice chair for agenda reviews. March 7th, board president and vice chair meet again. April 16th, that's coming, but we went ahead and put it down because we're turning in all of our information for this last monitoring review that we're in right now with Advanced Ed. So we're in the process of right now completing the narratives. I see our friends shaking their heads, uploading evidence and doing all of that. So we went ahead and put the stuff that's coming within this week and the next week in, because it's time for school to be over. It's time for our stuff to be updated. But that's just an example of how we are still continuing to move forward and meet the directives. Now remember, what is a directive? A directive is exactly what it says. You must do these. I give this example all the time when I say, Mr. Anderson, stand up. That's a directive. Very good. Very good, very good. You're moving too slow, sir. Yes. Moore said move faster. So a directive means that you have to do this. You know, it may not necessarily tell you exactly how to do it, and that's how you get your red, your yellows, and your greens, but it tells you that it must be done. So this is to let you know that with the remaining items that are left after the monitoring review, we're still moving. Okay, so if there are any questions about the timeline, or if you feel like we should have more things in there, please feel free to ask. But I just want to remind you that since we returned from the closeout review in December, that was also the same time when the charter stuff passed. And then we got out of school. And then 60 days went by where we were working pretty intensely with that charter process. And while all of that was going on, the regular work was still going on. So in between that, we were trying to get all these other things done. So if you have any other questions about it, again, we'll post this on the website after tonight, after your review. And if you see anything that we misspelled or typo, let us know before we post it. But that's for your review to look through, just as an update of the things that are still moving forward. Madam Chair?
That's it. Thank you very much. We have a financial, I believe you're up, Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Madam Superintendent. You should have before you the financial statement for February 2019, which represents the 5th month of the fiscal year 2019. Contained within the financial statement, I'll just talk about the financial statement a little bit, then I just want to just mention something else. Contained within the financial statement is, first there's the explanation of financial data, which provides the board a brief explanation of our financial data. Also provides a brief description of where we stand as of February 2018. Then there's the definition of accounting terms, provides the board a brief description of the various accounting terms that makes up the financial statement. Then we have a snapshot analysis. This is financial information that provides a general overview of our operations as of February of 2018. Monthly budget percentages provides a brief analysis of where we are as of February. As you know, February represents the 5th month. Therefore, if I were to divide 5 months into 12 months, that'll be 41.67%. Therefore, we are in hopes that our total expenditures are 41.67% or less. And we'd rather it be less. That means we'll be operating below where we are within the fiscal year. We got October, November, December, January, February. So it's 5 months in the fiscal year divided by 12 months for the entire year. That's 41.67%. Next, we have a pie chart showing our total cash inflows and total cash outflows. And you would note that our total revenues collected local sources about 35% of the total revenue. In fact, even if I were to look at the snapshot analysis, which pretty much shows our total revenues as of budget is at about 50% as of March, as of February of 2019. Expenditures are at about 40%. So we are a little bit lower than what the percentage mark is, which is 41.67%. Also, we have the combined balance sheet that pretty much speaks to where our financial position is as of February of 2018. Of course, we have a fund balance of about $36 million as of February of 2019. Again, fund balance of about $36 million as of February 2019. And lastly, we have a combined statement of revenues and expenditures, which is basically the income statement for the school district and shows this the total revenues and total expenditures as of February. But again, total fund balance of about $36 million as of February. Kind of want to talk about the fund balance right now, Madam President, and where we are and what we're looking at in the upcoming months.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Ma'am?
Thank you.
Okay. As you know, we've been talking about our need to make reductions. And we talked about throughout the year that we were looking at about a $10 million deficit. We are going to see, probably from this point forward, a substantial decrease in our fund balance. That is mainly because we have received the majority of our property taxes for fiscal year 2019. The majority of our property taxes come in during the months of November, December, January, and February, the majority of it. Therefore, this this excess in our fund balance is already budgeted for the next several months. Therefore, we'll see that fund balance start dropping down some. That is our need to make adjustments. Now, we received some information from the State Department on some projections. We're projected to have earned teacher units for 2019, for 2020, I should say, of about 1,680 teacher units. We currently have approximately 1,930-something teacher units. So we're about over 250 teacher units over from where the state shows what we earned as of 2020. What has happened is that because of our continual drop in student population, we're losing teacher units. We are losing an additional about 40 teacher units for 2020. We were already approximately 210 teacher units over for 2019. I add that 40 teacher units over for 2020, now you add 250 teacher units over. That means that we need to look at every single one of our schools. Just look at what we earn, compared to exactly what we have, and then we need to look at what we need to do there, make some adjustments in those particular schools or those particular areas. Now, we do know that some of our schools are indeed Title I schools. So some schools will have the option of picking up some of those units with their Title I dollars. We also receive what is called special ed or IDEA dollars. Some units will be picked up with some of those funding sources. There are also some additional funding sources that we receive where some of those units may be picked up with some of those dollars. But I say all that to say that even with those additional dollars, supplemental dollars, it's not nearly enough to erase the number of units that we're over. Therefore, and the superintendent is working on her plan now to be able to present to the board, therefore, some substantial reductions or adjustments will have to be made. And not only do we need to look at schools, we also need to look at every single department, every single basically department in operations, as well as finance, and everywhere. And then come to the board with a plan to kind of dig into this $10 million deficit. Because I think right now, we're getting very, very close to go ahead and get that plan out there so that the board can be aware of some of the decisions that you'll need to make. Madam President.
Mr. Watts, when you figure all of the Title I units that can be picked up and all the others, what do you anticipate is the bottom line of what our loss will be?
Loss in units?
Yes.
I would think probably the amount of Title I units that we can pick up, and this is a situation where I think we're going to have to have a really, really firm talk with the schools. We've got to have a firm talk with them, because many of the units we're picking up out of local dollars, we shouldn't be picking up those units. If they have the Title I dollars, and if they want those units, then they need to fund those units with those supplemental dollars. And so it's just a matter of priorities. I think each school with their Title I dollars, they need to prioritize what their true needs are, and then they can make those decisions. I would say that the amount of federal dollars, I would say probably less than well less than 100.
All right, so that still leaves 150.
Yes, at least.
Madam
That's
President,
at least.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Watts, now we're gonna lose some through attrition.
That's correct.
And you
That's
should
absolutely correct.
figure that in as well.
Yes.
And in the past, what the Department of Human Resources will sit down with the principals, and they have to sign a letter whether they're gonna retire, whether they're coming back and all of that. So would you not look at those things first
Absolutely.
before you start cutting?
Absolutely, yes. You always do that first. In fact, you want the cuts to be the very last thing that you do.
Right.
So certainly you take attrition first. And I think what Human Resources have been doing, I think some positions that have been, or some folk have been leaving, I don't think they've been hiring back, as quickly as we may have done previously.
In the past.
So certainly we'll take that under consideration first.
Okay.
So may I add, just to maybe add a little clarity to it? When we look at the state-funded units, that deduction is what we have to go after with state-funded, whether it's through attrition or whatever. And then, after that, federal programs can use some of their money to maybe add somebody back. But our actual reduction from the state-funded units will be the larger number. And then we can kind of compensate, because federal dollars will be compensatory, so you can use them in places where you wouldn't get certain things otherwise. So that big number is gonna be the actual reduction from the state, and then we'll come behind that with federal dollars in many cases. We'll be able to pull some people back in.
I have a question too.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is in line with this, but it may, but I know that there is a bill up in the legislature to approve a 4% raise for the teachers. And my understanding is that is only for the state designated teachers. So how do we make up the 4% raise?
That's an excellent question.
Finally, I got an excellent question.
You've been trying, you got
I
that.
know. Okay, I get a star for the night.
In fact, I even stated in my explanation of financial data, and I'll just read as it states. It says, as you're aware, the Alabama State Legislature is currently in session in an effort to adopt a general fund budget and the education trust fund budget for fiscal year 2020. While we don't know which line items in the budget will be adjusted from current year, we are aware that Governor K.I. has already recommended a 4% raise for all education employees. This means that our local general fund will not only have to absorb all locally funded units, but it will also have to fund the cost of the raise with the additional benefit costs
It's
associated.
not bad.
So any locally funded units that we have, we would have to pick that up as well.
And when you say locally funded units, you mean units that we were not allocated by the state
correct.
that we pick up in our?
Or that was picked up by the federal dollars.
And are those just teachers, or is that other
It's
employees?
other employees too. What the state does, they look
It's
at,
across the board, everybody.
total student population in every single school. And based on that student population, first they're gonna provide every school one principal. Then based on the student population, each school will earn X number of teacher units. Then X number of counselor units. Then X number of librarian units. And then X number of assistant principal units. And based on what we earn, we need to look at what we actually have. And then we can kind of start looking at some of the decisions that we'll have to make. Of course, as Ms. Brown stated, we certainly take attrition under consideration as well. And look at those federal dollars and see if those federal dollars can pick up some of those units. But I make the statement that we need to have a very, very hard talk, well, not necessarily hard talk, but a serious talk with our principals so that they are clear that the district cannot afford to pick up additional units when you have supplemental funds that you can pick up those units with. It's just a matter of prioritizing.
And for the new board members, you need to understand, when they do teacher units, they are counting the counselors and all, although they don't teach. They are counted in the teacher units, and that makes a big difference.
Yes.
So also, one other thing that goes along with this, Ms. Gillis has started to meet with all of the principals to do what we call staffing, so that she can go over with each principal what you've earned at your school and how many teachers you are over, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they will be, or already are, finished with all of them. They're very much aware of what they've earned from the state and what they actually have already. And so all of that information, we're trying to make sure they have it, so they understand, exactly what it is that we're using to make decisions.
And that has to do with population, school population.
That's correct.
The more students you have in your school, the more teachers you earn, basically. Fewer students, fewer teachers.
Madam President, so how will this impact some of the programs that we have in our schools? And when I,
Well, and that's where, when we talk about our need for additional revenue, it kind of lends itself to that too. There are some places in which, it's understood that, especially in an urban school district, that you're gonna have a number of units open. And it is expected that if you're gonna truly have a good instructional program, that hopefully our public will buy into it and understand that we need these additional revenues. Affluent taxes, kind of what I'm headed towards. But because we do not have, and we're only receiving just 10 meals, then it's cost enough to have to make decisions based on the revenues that we're getting, which is somewhat unfortunate. But that's where we are at this particular time.
and one other question, right now, what is our 1 month reserve? Where are we?
We're beyond our 1 month reserve, and now our 1 month reserve is about 19.7 million, I think, something around that amount. And I think right now we have about 36 million in the fund balance.
Any other questions for Mr. Watts?
I actually do.
Okay.
Well, you know me, Mr. Watts. As far as, I know that there's been discussion of some cuts. Is there anything that you all can share where you may have started trimming already? Say maybe having departments to cut their budgets a little bit, and if so, about how much?
Yes, we did ask each department to look at their budget, especially the budget in general fund, and I've asked them to cut it between 20% and 30% based on need. Some departments has already done that. Some are pretty much meeting that, doing everything they can to meet that threshold. So that will save us an additional a few $1 million by them doing that.
One other question, and this is about some of the contracts that we have. I think it may be contracts, I think it might be useful if we could get a list of all of our contracts and just kind of see where we may need to keep and let go of some things.
Which is the other thing that we also talked about, that brought up in our cabinet meetings too, that we want to look at every single contract that we have And when we talk about prioritizing, we're not talking about just prioritizing staff. We need to prioritize every expenditure. Is there a true need for this particular contract? Or is it something that we don't have to have? It's more of a want than a need. And so these are other things that we're talking about. And is there a potential where we can look at the merging of certain departments or the merging of certain things in an effort to just to be a little bit more efficient in some areas?
So will the board get a list of the contracts and with the dollar amounts, how much we're paying for each one?
Certainly, yes, we can provide you a list of the
So
contracts.
let me make sure I'm clear on what you're asking. Are you asking contracts with people or contracts with programs, all just
All
contracts across the board?
across the board.
Okay, okay, we can do that.
Yes.
So, and one other thing that I wanna make you kind of, this is just an example, but, so when we're talking to schools about staffing, for instance, so if you have a school that has, 450 students, but the threshold for earning an assistant principal is 500. So we know that there are some schools with 450 kids, they really do need an assistant principal, but they're not gonna earn it from the state. So then that becomes, when we look at it, if that's an issue and it really needs to happen, that may become a local unit. Because we know, as a district, that you really do need
Right.
somebody in a school, in this particular school, for instance, to help, even though they only have 450, 475 students. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to get principals to look at with their other dollars, to say, we know you need it, but at this point, we're gonna have to kind of draw a hard line because you didn't earn it. So we gotta figure out a way to maybe help you think about ways to get it. And so that's sort of the mode we're in, also with, educating our principals on things that they may or may not do and how they can do them in a way that's different from what we've done maybe in the past.
And that 10 mil really hurts a little bit, being an urban school district, to only receive 10 mil. It really does. Because in an urban center, another time, there are so many other social needs out there. You have to fund the social workers. You have to fund the psychologists. You have to fund so many other areas that a lot of other, different types of school districts will not have to fund. And so, in most urban school districts, they are receiving, the amount of local support to be able to substantiate those particular costs. So, but because we're only at where we are now, then the tough decisions have to be made there, so.
And we don't have any more schools to sell, do we?
We have to put a list together, and we are looking at how we can pull some of our different central offices together so that next year we don't have so many of those outliers. So we're, in our talking and discussing, that's all a part of it, and some of that is going to happen. That's information as we work through this, but part of our major discussion right now is the cuts and doing things through attrition, so that if we say we need to cut 250 and 150 people leave, even if it's through attrition and we don't replace them, that is a reduction.
Yes.
And so that doesn't touch people physically because they've already left. So as much as possible, we're looking at all of that, but as long as you get to that reduction that you need to make, however you get to it, it's a reasonable way to approach it.
And so the thing that I just want to remind you, Madam Chairman, is that the sale of the school last year gave you the additional revenue that we enjoy now beyond our 1 month operating. But as we go on, and we continue to go on, we spend
It's gonna
into that
evaporate.
amount.
It's gonna evaporate.
So we have to do this. We have to do it because there won't be another replenishing of that one-time sale from last year. So we will be moving.
I'm aware.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ford.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, summer's coming.
Good evening. Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Moore. I just want to do an update. You have the packet before you, so I will not go through every page. But if you have questions on the page, by all means, I will address it. The page I want to begin with, well, first I want to look at the cover page. We want to make sure that we know in summer, it's important we keep moving forward. Research says that sometimes the gap that's lost is because of summer learning, or lack thereof. 2/3 of the reading loss occurs because of summer gap in not reading. So one of the things we're hoping that we would do this year is read with our Mayan and our Renaissance. So that's very important. Whether the students are in summer school or not. We want to truly communicate that. On page 3, you see the district-sponsored summer schools. It's the 3rd page. And we're just going to look at that page. We know that in order to be in promotion in elementary school, the student has to make between a 50 and a 59. If they made less than a 50, they cannot receive credit during the summer as part of promotion. And in the secondary school, they had to make at least a 40 in order to receive the opportunity to recover that credit. Very important that we know that. You see that the elementary schools, every school has the opportunity to be in summer school. Katoma will host, for instance, and 4 schools, Carver, Keene, Morris, and South Lawn students will attend that school. And likewise, as you go down, Crump, you have Fitzpatrick, Monroe, Flowers, and Highland Avenue students will attend Crump.
Yeah.
So every school in elementary, every school in middle have the opportunity for their students to attend summer school. Any questions on that page?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Under the elementary, it says with a final grade between 50 and 59 in reading or math, they have an opportunity to register for one failed course. So how does that help them if they don't get to go to either one of those classes if they're failing both?
Very few students fail both. So when we looked at the research, most did not need either one or the other.
What if they need both?
And we'll look back at that to see, but I think that in the past, if a student failed both, the success rate in the summer was they did not recover it anyway. But I'll look back at that to make certain.
I think most of your teachers will tell you to deal with the students when they fail 2 or more courses in elementary, it's very difficult for them to perform well at the next grade level. But
So
we
they
do
keep
want-
them back, pretty much?
more
Okay.
than likely. But we do want to strengthen them, and even if they can pass that level of reading, say, in summer school, that's good. It helps them to be a better student the next year, but it probably will not get them a promotion if they fail to.
Does the cost of summer school, is that a hindrance?
There's no cost for any Title I school. All students
Okay.
attend free with promotion.
Okay, I was a little confused when I read it, so,
But
okay.
if you're in a non-Title I school, because the funds are coming from Title I, and we cannot pay for it. So if you're in a non-Title I school and you're attending for promotion, you would have to pay for it, because Title I cannot pay for it.
And is that a hardship for some families as well?
Again, many times it have not been, based on the research that we had, very few students from the non-title schools needed to recover 2 courses. So if they needed only one, the parents were able to recover that one.
Okay.
Yes.
I had a quick question, and it's kind of not really summer school related, but I know we have a lot of many Title I schools. Are most of those schools offering some type of before, after school type of enrichments to
Yeah.
maybe help with, to maybe cut down some of the numbers of kids having to go to summer school?
We are, and really we want to ensure that all year we're considering that. So the students who are not performing up to the grade level of a 50 to 59, that was hoping to be recovered through remediation all year. So I could give you the numbers, but I didn't have that tonight.
Yes, and let me add to that. So one of the things we're doing, as we look at the before and after school, mostly after school enrichment type programs, is that we're trying to help principals and teachers connect what's happening in the daytime when the students are there with what their deficiencies are, so that when they come in the afternoon, you're addressing their deficiencies as opposed to a generic kind of program in the afternoon. And so students come in with different needs. Teachers in the afternoon programs need to know what those needs are. That is gonna take some communication between the regular classroom teacher and the afternoon person, so that kids are not just kind of spinning their wheels. They're learning things, but it's not targeted or focused towards what they need. So we're trying to move more in that direction of making those after-school programs an extension of what they are missing or not getting during the school day, so that they are not so far behind.
if a cost must occur, it's $300 for one credit and $150 for a half credit. And that's on page 3, at the third page as well, on the right-hand side of the column. For enrichment, non-Title I schools will not be allowed to attend their summer enrichment program because it's being paid through title sources. But each school, and you can see further in the package, they have the ability to host their own summer opportunity, and that's built into the package. And this is district-sponsored summer programs on this page. If you look at the next pages, you can see exactly what I was saying, that it begins with the district-sponsored programs for the first 3 pages. Then on the third page in that category, you see the school-based programs. So every school has the ability to host their own school-based programs.
And I see here where you have school-based programs, the whole site, like, for instance, Bears, then the parents, if they needed enrichment in reading, math, and science, then the parents would pay for that.
Yes, ma'am, exactly, yes.
But Bear would be a whole site.
Be a host site, and it's not required, that's enrichment. If the parent wanted their child to attend, then they would pay. And for the most part, if a student even passed, but they were struggling in the 6s or whatever, we're encouraging those students to attend some enrichment so they can recover some of the standard they did not obtain in all of these school-sponsored programs.
Now, I see with Carver Elementary and Magnet, the YMCA is going to fund that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And again, in enrichment, there's no cost associated
Right,
with
right.
the program. I want to make sure we know that. Only when it's recovering
Grades.
credits. So all the enrichment is no cost to the students with a program. For instance, in middle school, we have some transitional programs. So if you're moving from the 5th to the 6th grade, or in high school from the 8th through the 9th, we have some transition programs. We want to make sure that we have opportunity to let them transition this summer and learn their school. The next page I want to look at, and is where you have it numbered, is page 1 with the middle and senior high summer promotion sessions. It's on the bottom, it's labeled page 1. It's a new section, labeled page 1. And here we want to clearly identify the date of starting and ending. On June the 3rd is the first day of classes, and on July the 16th is the last day of classes. This is for promotion. The minimum class size is 20 students, and graduation for senior high school students will be on the 29th at Lee High School.
I was happy to see that uniforms are required for summer.
Yes.
That's where you can identify the students that are supposed to be in the classroom. Even if they have the uniforms from another school, they will still be in uniform from
Exactly.
their
Yes, ma'am.
particular school.
Yes, ma'am.
Will summer school for the secondary level, what are the hours going to be like again? I may have missed it. But
Okay.
is it every day of the week?
It's on page 3.
No, it's on page 3. Look on page 3. 4 days per week, Monday through Thursday.
And we're going to do the same schedule as the summer program we have here at the district. No classes on Friday, no work on Friday.
That's a good thing.
Will any of this be on the computer?
It will be.
Okay.
With the summer enrichment and the summer promotion, it'll be blended. Some at home, some in school. We made certain that we debated for a moment, but students can still learn while at home, but every day at the school, they'll have the opportunity to log into Edgenuity, Khan Academy, whatever, and it'll be blended learning through computer-based programs.
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand this. So for summer school, they will, and I'm speaking only of secondary at this time, they will be able to they're gonna go to class 4 days a week.
Yes.
They will be in there with the teacher.
Exactly.
And then the other part they can use the computer-based.
Exactly.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
even with the blended opportunity, we want the teachers supporting the learning there as well.
Okay.
Not for 30 minutes or an hour on the computer, I do not come and see where you are. We want to check for understanding in all classes.
And then all of our summer school curriculum will be standard-based, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And one other
Unless
question.
the law changes.
Well, yeah, I know, right? We're pending.
We're independent right now.
Were secondary principals included in the makeup of this as well?
They were. The conversation occurred, and we know that you cannot teach all standards in 6 weeks. You cannot recover them in 36. But we identified the most critical standards, the most that if you had to obtain those in a year, those are ones that we are centering our focus on when we teach this summer.
And what about our student athletes as far as like the NCAA rules, excuse me? Is it flexible enough for them, for those students?
It is if they are recovering standards completely, but they cannot recover just 1 or 2 or 5 standards. They must take the entire course. So based on where we are, we shared that with NC eligibility, and they said yes, they can obtain the credit for it. We had to present a platform for learning this summer, and they approved it.
You
It's
all
similar
might,
to the Evening Academy. They approved the Evening Academy the same way that they approved the Summer Enrichment Program, promotional program.
Mr. Mitchell, you all need to really stress number 1 on page 3 criteria, because when I was counselor, they would just show up, but they have to have a form, signed recommendation form from the principal. But the parents need to know that as well in advance, so maybe some of these things could be highlighted.
Yes, ma'am. Starting next week, we will begin to have communications, Mrs. Salter, assistance there to make sure everyone's fully aware of the criteria.
Okay. That'll save you a lot of time.
With that being said, we also will have an orientation, the first day, to make sure every parent is aware of the criteria.
I see on here we have tier 2 and tier 3, and that's related to RTI.
Yes.
Do we have some type of form or structure in place for our RTI in every school where they're doing the same thing, so it would transition over into
Exactly.
summer school?
And what we're doing is we're re-identifying exactly what it means for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 instruction. We know that the diagram says that 80% of our students should obtain the standards in tier 1 instruction. That's not happening. So we want to make sure that in tier 2 and in tier 3 that we're delivering that type of instructional support. So we have identified that, and that's a training that we will have as well this summer to support the teachers there. The other thing that we're doing this summer is we want to clearly state this point. It's also an opportunity for modeling and coaching. Our teachers, we consider the model teachers, will have an opportunity to support those teachers who are deemed not ready yet or whatever by whoever is saying that to ensure that they're being supported. Very important.
Then that leads me to another question, and I promise, John, I'm gonna leave room for you. You touched on something that I wrote down as a question, and you really answered it, but it was about getting more boots on the ground in the schools, and I know now we're hearing of the cuts. That's why I asked, how much is it going to impact what we're trying to do? Because to me, the more people we have in the classroom working with the students, the better our students will perform. So now I'm hearing about the cuts, it's worrisome to
Well,
me.
I think what we have to balance is that the cuts match the reduction in the number of students.
Okay.
So it's not like we're keeping 30,000 students, but we're cutting 40 teachers. The number of students went down, therefore the number of teachers went down. So we're not here in it like this. It's sort of a balancing act from the State Department. So if you have fewer students, then you'll have a reduction in the number of teachers you have across the board. Some schools might not have any, or maybe one. Some will have 7 or 8 if they have more students in their reduction. So over time, we have to try to help our principals balance that reduction based on the number of students, because some of our schools have really small class sizes. and then some have a little bit more. And then, of course, we know, high school, middle and high school people can have up to 150 per day. So if they decide to have a larger section, and then a smaller section, they can do that as long as they don't go over 150 per day.
150.
So all of this is a balancing act, and we're trying to help all of our principals through the people who are in the central office who have to work with all this, understand that there's a way to make this work. First year may be a little bit difficult because we've been used to having more, but over time, as the students go down, so what I would like to do as superintendent is to get to a place where we're stabilized with the number of students we have, so that over time, our number of teachers will also stabilize. And we can say, we pretty much are gonna look like this for the next few years.
But does the pay raise, does it make it more challenging? Because we're having to cut, but we're also having to increase salaries for some of those?
The state will give us the raise for the number of
Right.
units they give us.
But
So
Okay.
if we keep local units, then we have that responsibility.
Right.
So if we reduce our local units, then
Okay.
it will reduce the amount of money that we're responsible for. But if the state gives it to us, then they're gonna give us the raise to go along with it.
I want to clearly let it be known that on page 2, in order to earn credits for classes taken, a student may not be absent more than 3 days for
Yeah, I
any
had-
reason, excused or
I
not.
had already highlighted that on mine.
So, very important.
They need to understand that up front, so
Yes.
if they have to go to camp or wherever they have to go, they need to know.
Now, with
I had
enrichment,
already
they
highlighted
can be,
that
and we're
online.
still meeting on that, if a student is absent in enrichment, they can't be put out for lack of a grade attainment or whatever. But if they're missing classes, we don't want them to hold a spot.
That's somebody else got
Someone else could have that over there, who's supporting it. And the last page is, had the summer school recommendation. I just wanted to share the form, the second to the last page. So that's an example of the recommendation form. But I want to make a correction. Here, we haven't changed it, but you see the 50, it should be a 40 for secondary, middle, and high.
Say that again.
So on that page, it says, students may enroll in summer school in order to receive credit. You see a final average of 40, it should be 40 and not 50. Are there any questions?
I do have one, or maybe more. As far as our CSI money, is majority of this money being spent on summer school, or do we have anything left over that still needs to be spent?
And because of where we are, even with our fiscal outlook right now, it's going into next year. So it's being supported with teacher units. So let's say, for instance, a teacher was being lost at Nixon. They may use some of that money for next year. So the money is through now to the end of September 2020. So we're not saying use it all this summer. Consider your situation. If you have lost a unit, you can support your school with an additional teacher unit there with those funds. So the company needs assessment is very important that we're looking at that. And we're encouraging them to support their school with what they see as their need.
Our PD, you mentioned that. Who's responsible for doing the PD for, the schools or the district?
This summer,
Yes,
The
well,
con-
yeah, the summer.
as
Throughout the
relates to
year.
learning of standards country, and we're having a PD plan. I won't put Dr. Cook on the spot, but we have an opportunity this summer where we're going to support teachers with our PD. And areas of greatest concern.
And I think they've already received a calendar. I know we've gotten something. Am I right? No, they haven't. Oh.
But as it relates to CSI schools, we want to have a targeted opportunity this summer to support those schools because they did receive like an extra $231,000 to spend. And it's 15 schools that received that money. So this is a great opportunity to support those schools.
I have a question, and it's probably a young questions, it's a what-if question. On the final average, I'm assuming that this 40 is that credit recovery type thing, okay? So what I'm saying is, let's say a child is at a high school and has a 20 average normally in a history class, goes to credit recovery, fails that with a 45. Which average are they using?
The credit recovery average of the 45. Now, either way.
I'm hearing people disagree. Are you
Are
right?
you talking about how they get into summer school?
No, I'm asking okay, if they failed both, because credit recovery, how long is credit recovery? How long does it take to do, if they failed that too, which average are you using to get into summer school? The credit recovery, 43, or the 25 original?
Is that the final grade, the credit recovery grade? Now, I would think that if that's the final grade, then that's the grade we're utilizing, because it's the final.
How long does it take to do credit recovery?
Well,
What's
because
the
our
length?
system where we are, we cannot just recover a particular standard, they must take the entire course over again. So it's really taking the entire course over again, not just standards. So very important we know that. So if they had an opportunity there and they were to pass the class, then they recover all the way. Now, you want to speak to that, Dr. Williamson? Okay.
No, thank you.
And I want to make certain that the answer I said, you know, if it's the final answer of their grade, then that's the one that they should be provided. We'll check on that to make certain.
Madam President, I have one. Mr. Mitchell, if you look on page 8, number 7, I'm not understanding when you say course taken at another school. Look at number 7. It says if a course is offered at a Montgomery Public Schools summer school site, credit will not be given for that course taken at another school. So if it's not a summer school site that we have on our paperwork and they take it at some other school, they will not get credit unless they have prior approval from the principal?
Exactly, yes. Now, if we have the Algebra 2 class being offered in Montgomery, right? They want to go to Prattville or somewhere else and take their course. And they have to get permission for that to happen.
Okay, that's what I need to understand, because when it says not be given credit for it.
An example is that if they need to recover 4 classes, right? They can recover 2 if they're not a senior.
Right.
If they're a senior, they can recover 3.
Three,
If they
I
need
saw that.
another one beyond that, they can go somewhere else and take that 4th one.
But they
That's
have
the
to have
situation.
prior permission.
Exactly. So we have to have a scenario such as that says, I will provide you that approval because you needed 4 courses and not 2 or 3. That's an
Okay.
example.
So say that again, they can recover, or they can go to summer school to up to 4
No,
classes?
in our system, a non-senior can only recover 2 classes.
But a senior?
A senior can
Senior
do 3.
can recover 3. But if another system has a course that's a possibility, they can recover that somewhere else if they have that prior approval from the principal
Before they enroll.
before they enroll.
Any other questions for Mr. Mitchell?
No one needs 4 credits. I want to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
If they do, they need to come
Yes,
back and
yes.
see it.
I do
Catch
have
that
another
other
question,
train.
Madam President.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to get my questions answered. I do have another question, Mr. Mitchell. It's dealing with PD again. I know that you all are going to do your, have PD based on standards wherever our weaknesses are throughout the district. But my question is, will we only offer PD one time, or are we gonna come back and follow up to make sure that, you know, teachers or whomever are implementing it and giving some refreshers if needed?
Ongoing job embedded. That's our goal. Even in here, you saw where you had support from the central office in classes, but we really want to have support all year. We're working on a plan right now to support better, you know, our students. Because when you're a veteran teacher, and you may know and understand, but when you're a novice, it's something that you're winging, and we don't want that to be the case. So we want to have that kind of support in our class.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Moore?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell, appreciate it. as you can see, a lot of time and effort goes into every report that you hear tonight, whether it's finance or summer school or whatever. A lot of work goes into that ahead of time so that they can narrow it down to tell you what we're doing.
Right.
But it's weeks and weeks and weeks of work to get to that point. And there may be times when they have to make some adjustments on some things. So thank you for your questions, because those things will help guide us as we continue to work through the plans. But
And
we're
Miss-
trying to make a more concentrated effort of making sure that everything that we're doing now works to benefit our students and their performance. And we hope that you will see some differences over time.
And Dr. Williamson was letting Mr. Mitchell know he was on that hot seat by himself. She worked on.
Yes, I will have to work on. I'll
She
have to
said,
work
"You
on
got
Dr.
that."
Williams and her facial expressions.
Well, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Next time she has facial expressions, she's gonna have to talk. Okay, so I'm gonna, for just a minute, talk to you about the superintendent's evaluation. My evaluation as the superintendent is not going to be conducted tonight, let me clarify that. This is something that's gonna be done later on, and when it's done, you'll have a document that you will complete, and you will also have from me backup to support whatever score you decide you want to give the superintendent in that evaluation. So you will have supporting documentation. Ms. Nevels, Dr. Nevels may take up a few minutes, just about 2 minutes, to give you a little quick overview, and then I might take a few minutes to talk just a little bit more, and then we'll move on to the next item.
You guys, good afternoon. This is just a reminder, if you think back to, I think about January, we talked about the evaluation process for the superintendent. The evaluation process, because the board came on in January, it kind of covers the whole time for a contract, but not really, because you all need to have an opportunity to have that full engagement with her through that process. Additionally, since the contract ends, that contract end will happen in 2020, did I say that right? Yes. Then the process is truncated. So in January, we talked about what the process would look like. There's an evaluation instrument. Dr. Moore did her self-assessment, and she's created her learning plan. She's talked with that learning plan, she's talked about the learning plan with the senior leadership and with the board president. And that learning plan really covers what is the work right now in our district. There are lots of opportunities for different things, but the work in MPS is so important right now, that's her focus. And so her learning plan revolves around that. This is an opportunity to present the learning plan to you so that you can see where we're going as a district, where she's going, and all of her learning opportunities. In late June, July-ish, you will get an opportunity to see a midpoint conversation so that you can see where we are in her trajectory. And in November-ish, you'll get a chance to see the evidence. Because of the contract obligations, we need to be able to see that information at the end of this calendar year, because her contract will end in the summer of the next year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what you have here on the screen, actually, you have 3 pretty major goals. That one deals with finance, one deals with the strategies in the strategic plan, and the other one deals with the performance-related information that goes with advanced ed accreditation. And each one of those areas, then you have some activities that are identified. You only have 3. There are a lot of activities going on, but I tried to confine them to some of the major issues. So one, you heard a little bit about some of those activities tonight. And please be aware that the superintendent realizes and acknowledges that the superintendent does not do all of this work alone. There's no way possible that the superintendent can do that. So I give credit to the people who work with me. I have a lot of oversight. I meet with them a lot. We talk a lot. I toss out ideas. They toss out ideas. I say, okay. I say, let's flesh it out a little bit more. But we're constantly working on these things. And so if anyone thinks that the evaluation is just what the superintendent does alone, then that doesn't work. It doesn't fly. Because I have lots of good helpers who work on these things with me in different departments.
So we developed a strategic plan. I'm fleshing out all of the action steps. You approved the goals. I believe we had 8. So we're gonna flesh those out, and as we go through the year, you will be getting updates on how we are moving on the strategic plan and the actions. You'll be getting updates on the finances. You're getting updates on how we're gonna try to get to the financial point where we need to be and what kind of reductions need to take place, and anything that you as a board need to do in order to help us get there. But the superintendent has to make sure that that information is given to the board in a reasonable fashion, and so that it's understandable, and that it makes good legal sense, and it makes good sense based on information that we get from the State Department and the kinds of things that we have to adjust to and criteria that we have to meet. So all of those things, part of the superintendent's job is to make sure that those things are done well, and that you as a board are not set up to have a recommendation made to you that doesn't make sense, or that is not legal, or is whatever. So as we work through these things, you'll be seeing more and more of this. And then, of course, we'll have our advanced ed review coming up again. You'll get information from that, and you can see whether or not we're moving through and progressing on that. So under the strategic plan, going back to that, each one of those goals will have a number of action steps connected to the goal. And those things will be brought to you and reported to you by staff as we go, so that you will constantly see how we're moving on the strategic plan, which is a roadmap for moving toward improvement. And that's where we want to go in all of those areas: finance, just overall student performance, and how we operate as a school system. I like to say that I would like for us to be where we are as close to being a well-oiled wheel as possible. And every once in a while you'll have a little bump. But to get rid of all of the big glitches that we know about over time, so that there's a process in place for everything that we do, and everybody from the board out to the schools will understand what those processes are, how we account for money, how we account for student performance, how we look at our testing and what we do with that, and how we train teachers, and the follow-up that goes along with it. All of those things, there's a lot that has to be done, but I think these 3 major goals cover a huge amount of things. And so at some point, as Dr. Nellis has said, you will be given a final document that you will score, and I will give you backup information to go with it, so that you don't have to try to remember everything that we've done. But to make a connection, before we move on to questions, to make a connection, it's important that as a board you remember all of the things that we cover in a board meeting or in a work session, all of the things that are listed on there as an agenda item, all of the reports that you receive, because all of this is a part of what we're covering under the superintendent's evaluation. So we'll present that information to you in a number of ways, but you'll have a final chance to pull all of that together, and then I'll give you something to help you remember some of the things we covered, and probably a notebook for each person that deals with each section. Okay? Any questions? All righty. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll go to the next item on the agenda. I think we finished with the evaluation.
It's up to you.
Okay, so, this is item E, where we talked about the services of a tax referendum consultant. And we talked about it early on. I got some information from Mr. Ziegler in this case, who pretty much is the person that most folks in the state use because of his experience and his expertise. And I sent you something early on about what he said in response to our inquiry. So I think we're at a point where we can at least discuss the possibility of pursuing that, or what do we want to do in between before we officially pursue it or not. So that's kind of the discussion I'd like for the board to have tonight, so that I have some guidance on what you want me to do regarding a consultant.
Madam President, I would think that Erica would address some concerns, because, well, you were not here when we took action on this before. And who can expound better on it than you? It was your proposal.
Well, Ms. Wise, you really put me on the spot. I wasn't ready for that. Well, I will start here. Some of my concerns, and I think I've talked to Dr. Moore about some of them I have. It is, you all are doing a phenomenal job. I just wish people could see it. I really do, to see what you do, how you get things going, how we are really trying to improve what we're doing. But my main concern is the public's perception of who we are, because we've always been whatever they've kind of created us to be. And I did the referendum, and I did it at the 5 years, the city council and all of that went back and forth. And there's this hope to get more. I know that we've had a state representative to pass away, so I will be honest, I'm concerned about who could be coming next. Because at the end of the day, if we get more than the legal minimum, which is 15 meals, and if one person in our local delegation votes no, it does not go to the ballot. So I know and I say that because I know it's going to take a lot of conversations, and a really good plan that we all would have to help put together. I guess the board would have input as well, because I know that our children cannot afford to not have, it goes back to what Mr. White said, we are a urban school district that's funded at the minimum, and even the research will show that that's kind of typical of urban school districts, always at the minimum. It's very hard to get what you really need, but I'm very open to Mr. Ziegler. I worked with a superintendent that worked with him when they were trying to get their millage increase. I've heard nothing but great things about this guy. Very knowledgeable about the law, more so than I am. I just read directions and followed them and put the referendum in order. But I welcome the help. I'll just say this openly, I just wish somebody would have called me, because the resolution, when it was rescinded, was on the day that my father passed. I would have liked to have a conversation about it, and so that I could have offered something to the conversation. But we'll see how it goes. But I just don't think we need to take everything off the table. I think we need to look at both. If we can get more, what is that going to look like? And honestly, if we can get the minimum, what's that going to look like, and how will that help our district? And I'll leave it right there.
Can I make a comment? I don't know if anybody else. Thank you, Erica. I know you worked really hard on it, and thank you for that, because you really enlightened me in about 2 hours on the phone. So thank you very much. I always believe that you hire the best, who has the best knowledge, who is the best roadmap, and I know we're not voting on it tonight. We know some about it, but as far as the legal, and from my understanding, he will have a plan for us, and it's a campaign that we're going to have to run. I write grants for a living for a nonprofit, and I always go for the maximum. We only need 5, but I'm going to ask for 50, because all they can say is we can only give you 30. So to me, we have got to go for the maximum. We cannot afford sitting here listening to Mr. Watts and these cuts and, everything. It's so sad to me. And we have such a great opportunity to ask. There is no reason why we can't be at the top. Pike Road is at, 26 or 28? That's in our county. And so we have got to do a better job. We've got to do better PR and get out there and talk about how good everything is, and that we are all in agreement of this. And we've got to sell it to our legislators and to the community. That is going to be our job. But a lot of people are saying now, that what I'm hearing sounds like things are turning around. It looks like the board is getting along. It looks like the superintendent is really doing a great job. It looks like that things are being cut. And so, and my response is yes, all of the things are doing well, but we've got to have more money. I mean, we've got to have more money, period, and we need the best for our kids, nothing but the best.
Well, I'll say you won't get any arguments from me. I just wanted people to know, because I did research the law, just really give them the honest perspective of what really could happen. I agree, we deserve the best. This is 50 years overdue.
Absolutely,
It really
absolutely.
is.
And
But-
look where we are.
Well, I think a lot of what we're discussing is true. I mean, I believe that with all my heart. We need to have this money. But Mr. Ziegler really doesn't give us a roadmap. I think he gives us the information we need to make a plan.
But I think he explains how
the law works.
Well, how the law works, but how, you know, it had, the resolution or whatever comes from the county commission, and then how then you approach your legislators. That's what I'm saying, is, you know, I think early on I asked, well, what is the ABC on it? You know, where do we go? And I think the tax attorney was the first thing
step.
in order. That is the first step. And
No, I
when
agree.
we meet, I think, you know, we have had conversations with the county, and it sounds like that they are in agreement to help support him, and with us doing that as a joint effort, because that's where it's got to come from. So you
Yep.
know.
But I mean, I myself am very much in favor of hiring Mr. Ziegler and getting him going on it so we can get moving forward.
Yes.
And let me say this, Ms. Smith. The information that you shared with the board was very, very good. The nuances of what has to happen in Montgomery
Right.
is a little bit different from what might have to happen in Birmingham or have to happen in Huntsville or Mobile or wherever. Those are the things that Mr. Ziegler would look at. Generally speaking, the need and the resolution and how you go about doing certain things that you had in your document were good. But the nuances of Montgomery, because every area will have something different, and because we're a county, we've got some city and some county and some other stuff, entities in it, so
divided
it's a little
into
bit different. And he will research for us all of those different little nuances, and then kind of give us an idea of this is how you approach this for Montgomery. He might give Huntsville something different. I've worked with him before in Huntsville and on several referendums, and he did the same kind of research to say to the board, this is what you have to deal with here in Huntsville, or, you know, some other places that he's worked with recently. He went in and looked at their particular kinds of things that apply to them in that area. So it's a little bit different. He can look at each one of them. He's very familiar with all that, and he'll do a very thorough job. Now, I know we talked about funding. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to see if we can maybe find some supporters who will give us a little contribution to the fee that he might charge, so that the board doesn't have to do that entirely. And it's very possible that there will be entities out there who might want to help with that. So we'll start putting those feelers out, and you all might do the same with people you know or companies you know that might be in gear to kind of help fund it a little bit. And that's perfectly permissible.
Madam President,
Yes.
I want to say you're absolutely right, because when I spoke to the superintendent in another county, that's what he said. He literally said, what you do in Montgomery will be maybe totally different than what I do. But I will say this, Mr. Ziegler came highly recommended. I mean, he is he's a phenomenal person. In fact, I think he's the only person in the state that can do this. And he's tackled a lot of them, pass or fail, but he's really helped. I know this particular county in going and being aggressive about doing it. He does not put the plan together, but he does break it down to the point that it by the time you put a plan together, it's very solid. But it's up to the people to vote, of course. But like you said, you just go out there, you get aggressive, and you ask for what you need.
Yep.
And the fact that this is a work session and we are not voting on anything now, but we really need to be thinking about this between now and our regular meeting, so we can vote on it. And I think for the most part, the board is in favor. So, still talk, like the superintendent said, to the people that would be willing to help us, because the saying about they don't need the money because we're not doing this and the other, we're not doing it because we don't have the money to do it. So that's a simple response to that.
Well, I think we have a lot to go on now with looking at the cuts we're gonna have and looking at what is gonna be funded by the state as opposed to what we are responsible for. And, you know, all of the other social services that need to be put into the schools. And when we talk about that and, you know, adding services, we can't do it without the money.
Thank you.
Any other business before us?
Well, mine will be brief. First of all, mine is just a thank you. So I won't talk long. But I did want to say, thank the staff. I know I asked all the questions, so I said I need to say thank you because they stayed extra hours. I don't have any money to give you. I'm a poor woman. But I know it was time consuming, but I know it was so necessary. We have to have these conversations because we have to go back and take it to the community. So we've got to be very thorough when we ask. So I appreciate your time. I know it's been past time to go, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, Madam Chair, I was going to say when Mr. Watts was up, I believe I talked to at least 3 staffers over the past week after we got the packet. And every question I had, each of you answered. You gave me all the information I needed. Did you notice I didn't ask a question tonight? And that is because I talked to those people this past week when I had questions that I wanted to be prepared for tonight, and they over-prepared me. I was quite informed, and I want to thank them for taking their special time. Here, we're all required to be here. They did not have to spend hours on the telephone with me to answer those questions. I very well could have waited till tonight, so I thank you for being so gracious and so thorough.
That just means that you're a good board member now, because they want you to call before the meeting and not people say.
You know, and I have to piggyback on that also. You know, taking the time to come in and sit and talk with each one of them. They did a great job in explaining, so, you know, there were no need for questions because we were everything was explained to us so that we would understand. And thank you once again.
Well, I think we have an extraordinary group of people in this room that are sitting along the sidelines. It doesn't mean they're not in the ring every day, though, and we are appreciative. Our next meeting is Tuesday, April the 23rd at 5 o'clock, a regular board meeting.
And our GAP meeting, GAP training.
Yeah, that's April 16th.
Okay.
Otherwise, we are adjourned.
Okay,
You got the 16th, you get gap training. 16th is your gap training.
I haven't had anything to drink in a while. It's got such a cold, such a...
What you doing?